You know that. Oh, hey, Deborah. So welcome, everyone. We are recording this, and we do record these calls for educational and promotional purposes. And wherever you see me with the, my empathy shirt, that is the area that's going to be recorded. So just to give you a heads up. And so I'm Edwin Rutch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I'm part of the Extinction Rebellion Empathy Circle work group. I'm here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I want to welcome you all to our Empathy Circle Facilitator Training. I'm really glad that we're going to be doing this. This is this training is optimized for the Extinction Rebellion community, but everyone is welcome. The training is the same training that we do, for any community, but we will be optimizing this a little bit for the Extinction Rebellion community. So I want to welcome you all to our training. I'm the producer, and we have a couple of different roles. I just want to introduce those roles. There's the producer, it's the person that I've been contacting everyone, setting up the cohort, kind of doing a lot of the background organizing. And and I'm going to be doing the breakout rooms and all the kind of technical stuff. And we have a group of trainers, and I want to just quickly introduce the trainers. We have Ann Jordan, if you want to kind of wave, one of our trainers. And then we have Dean. Is Dean here? Oh, there you are, just getting quite a few. So Dean is one of our trainers, the two trainers for this cohort. And then we have some trainees, and the trainees have taken the course before, and they're learning how to become trainers, and they're going to be helping us with some of the background stuff that happens here. So Linda is one of our trainees, as Graham, if you want to wave, and Martha, and Larry. So there's Larry. I think that's it for our trainees. Yeah. And so just a couple of people have popped in, and as a little bit, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to put this link in here, that if you haven't typed in your 3 most important values yet, we want to get those. We're going to be showing a slide with those values, and I just put it in there. You just click on that and add your 3 most important values. So with that, I'm going to now turn it over to Ann, who's going to lead our introductions, and I sort of bow out and hand it over to the trainers and the trainees at this point. So thanks, Ann. You're muted, Ann.
Welcome, everybody. I'm really good at speaking when I'm muted, and I'll, okay. But we'll do a round of introductions. If you'd like to introduce yourself, quite simply, we'll have about 30 seconds each, so we can keep on schedule, with your name, where you are, and what if XR group you're in, if you are in any, and the reason that you'd like to do this training. If you're able to start, and I'll start with one of the trainees. So Martha, would you like to be the first person? And then after Martha, Graham.
So, hi everyone, so I'm Martha. I'm in Cork in the south of Ireland. And yeah, I'd be involved with XR locally and nationally, as well as Empathy Circles online. And that's why I'm here. I've done training, and I wanted to see how this model of training is working and how we can spread this.
Thank you, Martha. Graham, and after Graham, Ron, please.
Thank you, Anne. I'm happy to be here. I really enjoy the facilitating empathy circles, even though I admit that I have a lot to learn. And I'm in a good space. And though I'm not an activist in Extinction Rebellion, I would describe myself as a social activist, but then there's a question about being an activist. But I'm very interested in facilitating XR because of the whole concept of passion and reconciling interests and helping people to coordinate. So it's really from a facilitator angle that I'm joining you guys. So I look forward to today. Thank you.
Thank you. After Ron, Renata, please.
Kia ora tātou. Good morning, everyone. My name's Ron Findlay. I live in Aotearoa, New Zealand. As Edwin said, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting up in bed in my little motorhome with a cup of tea. So if I start snoring, you'll know that it's overwhelmed me. I'm a member of XR, formerly of Portiki, but now of XR Aotearoa, New Zealand. I have a strong belief that connection rather than conflict is a way to move forward in the climate and ecological emergency that we are in the midst of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And after Renata, Larry, please.
Hi, my name is Renata. I involved with The Hive, I think it's called, in London. I'm here because I thought the Open Day was quite a transformative experience in terms of how to discuss things that you're really passionate about with other people and listen, actively listen. I know it sounds a bit obvious, but yeah, that really stayed with me, and I really loved it.
Thank you, Renata. And after Larry, Paul, please.
So hi, I'm Larry in Florida, and I'm a retired occupational therapist and kind of a retired scuba diver, and I'm very interested in our environment and shocked to see the coral reefs basically fade away during the course of my lifetime scuba diving in Florida. And very interested in bringing the empathic communication of empathy circles into all of our environmental groups. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. And after Paul, Linda, please.
Hi everybody, Paul. I live in St Albans. I've been involved with XR from the beginning, with all the democracy stuff. So citizens assemblies, and then we created Future Democracy Hub that created Trust the People. And I'm also a freelance facilitator, so always looking to improve and regularly practice my empathy skills. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks, Paul. And after Linda, Tina, please.
Hi, my name's Linda and I'm from West Wales and I'm with XR Cymru and XR Pembrokeshire local group. Yeah, I'm here because I undertook the training seems like some time ago now, and since then I've been running empathy circles in various settings, and I've just facilitating and co-facilitating, and I just can see the huge value of spreading a culture of empathy amongst everything we do.
Thanks, Linda. After Tina, Shai, please.
Hi, I'm Tina. I'm in Vancouver, Washington, so not Canada. So pretty much I'm in suburbia of Portland. And I'm involved with XR, and I haven't really been an activist per se before this, just because I didn't have the guts. And when I first learned about XR, I figured, okay, this is what we need to do. And so I've been pretty heartbroken at seeing how just human inability to deal with conflict is really like hampering what XR is trying to do, as well as in regular life. I don't like if people are hating on each other or doing like unkind things if it can be helped. So yeah, I came across the empathy circles sometime last year, and I joined a few, and I thought that was pretty amazing. And yeah, now I'm here because. So that's
Thanks,
me.
Tina. And after Shai, Deborah, please. I'm going to ask you if you can try to be a little bit quicker because we don't want to run over at the end. So Shai.
Okay. I'm in Tel Aviv now. It's 8 o'clock in the evening. I've been an activist for many years for a more egalitarian society. I think that this is the base, creating more egalitarian communication and more egalitarian groups and countries. The base of change. Well, I will not speak more now about it.
Thanks, Shai.
Hi, I'm Deborah from Cambridgeshire in the UK. I did the training with Edwin in January, and so I'm doing it again with a view to possibly becoming a trainer. I'm not a member of XR, but I'm very passionate about the environment. I'm doing a food forestry course at the moment, which is just fantastic, and it's wonderful to be helping people with projects. You know, there's a lot of spaces in London which are being used for good. Okay, glad to be here.
Thank you, Deborah. And Joelle, and then Freddie, please.
Hey, I'm Joelle in Portland, Oregon in the US. I am not currently a member of XR, but am really interested in climate and social justice issues. And also the way that sort of trauma and disconnect shows up in all the ways that we hurt and disconnect and hurt the planet. So yeah, this is great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And after Freddie, Michelle, please.
Hello, I'm Freddie. I'm from Lincoln in the UK. I'm 24. I'm not currently part of XR, but I feel passionate about the environment needs saving. I'm here to learn more about being empathetic for myself, for my family, for my friends, and the people I'm around. I've been to one session before. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thanks, Freddie. And after Michelle, Julia, and then Mark, please.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I live in Eugene, Oregon, on the west coast of the United States. Canadian transplant. I am with Extinction Rebellion America, trying to get a local group here in Eugene as well. And the reason I'm doing this training is XR is a welcome everyone team, which inevitably brings in conflict because we come from different spaces. And I think that if we are to be successful, one of the things we need to do is or that would benefit us is conflict. And this is a great way to conflict resolution. And this is a great way to try and achieve that. So I'm here to be successful with our group and myself and my family. Check.
Thanks, Michelle.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm living in Wales. I'm from England, but also lived most of my life in America and South America and Brazil. I'm multicultural, and I also feel that this listening is so important for any kind of conflict. And I don't like any kind of disharmony. And this is a really good way for every kind of society to learn how to deal with each other with our differences.
Thank you. Mark, and after Mark, Joelle. No, Joelle.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hello, hi. My name's Mark. I live in West Wales, and I am involved with XR to some degree. And I just think developing empathy is really important. It's something that I'm ongoingly want to develop for myself, but I think it's really vital if humans aren't going to self-destruct.
Thanks, Mark. And Joelle.
I already introduced myself, so I'll pass it on to the next person.
I apologize.
No worries.
I went wrong there. So
I must have been.
And then Tiaho, please.
I also got cut out. I think I missed my turn with my Wi-Fi.
I'll come back to you, Aaron.
Thank
So
you.
Dean and Tiaho, and then Aaron.
Hi, I'm Dean from Extinction Rebellion UK. I am part of the XR Southwest team, and I'm XR Plymouth and XR Empathy. I'm one of the trainers. I'm looking forward to getting to know you all a bit better. I'll pass it on there. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. So Tiaho?
Kia ora everyone. Yes, my name's Tiaho. I'm in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I'm here because I'm invested in social environmental justice. I'm interested in restorative practices and constitutional change. Action and empathy, empathy and action is an idea that I really like.
Thanks, Tiaho. And Aaron, and then Lindner. Or is it Monica? So Aaron.
Hi, my name's Aaron. I'm in the East Midlands of the UK. I am here because I started working in education recently. Our young people really could benefit from an empathic culture in the schools, and then going into society as contributors. If they've got more empathy, I think they're more likely to get involved with good causes. So thank you very much I'm looking forward to hearing all of your shares and getting to know you all more. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. So Monica and then Cecilia.
Can't hear you, Monica.
Yeah, you're muted, Monica.
And now, can you hear me?
That's good, yeah.
Okay, so I'm Monica, I live in Germany. I practice focusing, which is basically listening to yourself. So listening and be listened is kind of a natural need, I would say, a process like breathing. And I use it for several projects. For example, I have a change group in my city where we practice this, and I'm curious to learn other ways of listening to each other.
Thank you. Cecilia.
Lovely to see you all, and I hope you. My camera doesn't work, so I'm not trying to. I hope it's not too rude. And I've been speaking a lot about this. I'm very excited about the possibilities of empathy circles, and really the grounding or the potentials we found out last time. So I want to wear you out with that, but as I've done to my friends, hopefully not. I guess that's all I can say for the moment. And I forgot who I was to.
You were the last so far, so I think that just leaves me. So I'm Anne Jordan. I'm in the southwest of England as well, in Minehead. And I'm here and looking forward to this training because I'm kind of become sort of passionately committed really to trying to develop a culture of empathy, and to do that in XR to help, I believe it will make us more effective in what we're doing. And now I'm going to hand back to Edwin for the next section.
Yeah, and I'll pass it on to Dean if there's any questions. Did you hear any questions to answer, Dean?
I'm not aware of any questions. Does anyone like to ask a question if they'd like to?
Let's not ask questions at this point, otherwise it'll open the can of worms here. So, so I'll just say somebody asked about confidentiality in the sign-up form, and we do record this. So these calls are recorded, and wherever I am is recorded. So in terms of confidentiality, we're fairly open and sort of transparent in these groups. So I'll just answer that one question. And with that, I'll pass it on to Graham then, who's gonna talk about the purpose.
So thank you, Edwin. The purpose of our Empathy Circle Facilitator Training is that we explore and understand the values of the Empathy Circle so that we're able to guide others. And the second point is we are here to deepen our experience of being an Empathy Circle Facilitator. And the idea is that we develop our strengths, and we learn where our strengths lie, and we learn where our kind of learning edges are, where we need to sort of push some boundaries or or learn some new practices. And finally, the idea is to develop a community, develop some bonds between people, get to know each other, and thereby being a little bit stronger in the world. So thank you. And if I'm right, I pass on to Larry.
Thank you, Graham. So I'm just going to give a very brief overview of the 5 classes. In the first session, the goal is to review the empathy circle practice and to be introduced to some of the core values of a culture of empathy, like inclusion, equality, mutuality, openness, care, and of course, to experience the benefits of the empathy circle practice. In the second session, we'll focus on the practice of the how-to introductions and begin to facilitate an empathy circle. In the third session, we'll demonstrate the how-to again, and we'll present some challenges in the circle situations if you feel already. And in the fourth session, we'll get more time to facilitate and discuss the challenges that might arise. And in the fifth session, we'll integrate your learning and gather feedback about your experience. And now I'll turn it over to, is it Anne?
Yeah, thank you, Larry. So, so the Empathy Circle is part of a much bigger vision that we hold, which is to build a culture of empathy in the world. And in some ways, this is a training and a means to develop those empathic skills. So the values that, some of the core values that we hold as being really important are empathy, clearly, because that's at the core of this. And most basically, that means sensing and feeling into the experience of others. And self-empathy is sensing and feeling into your own experience. Another one of the 4 key ones is mutuality, which is aspiring to reciprocate that empathy so that it's a 2-way process or all-way process between all people. And thirdly, openness, being open yourself, to be open, express yourself, and to be open to other people expressing themselves too. And fourthly, I would say it was care, and that care is essential for health and welfare and well-being of all of us. And that's not, obviously there are many more values, but I would say those are the 4 main ones. And you'll see in the chat, there's a link, if you haven't yet done it, to a list where you can add your 3 main ones. But we'll go round and I'll call on you. And if you'd like to share what your 3 core values of empathy are.
Oh, I'm actually going to show the screen. If you just turn it over to me, then yeah, I have a screen share. So
what, rather than go round, Edwin?
Yeah, so great. We had asked that you fill out 3 of your 3 most important values, and you filled it into that Mentimeter. It captures and it creates a word cloud. So I wanted to share the word cloud that we have of everyone's values in this cohort. So this is what we came up with. We have the empathy, mutuality, openness, pretty big there. Looks like a lot of people had that value. And then we have all these other ones: respect, mutuality, compassion, relationality, integrity, inclusion, and common humanity. So you can see there's a lot of different values. So we really want to have everyone bring their own personal values to the empathy circle. And in terms of building a culture of empathy, it's really good to have sort of a map and a picture of how your values relate to empathy and a culture of empathy. And it comes in really handy to, in the sense that, for example, and I'll just give a quick example here, that I'm, more politically on the Democratic progressive side, but I wanted to reach out to Republicans, the two parties here in the United States, and ask them what their values are. So I went to the Republican convention in California here several years back, and I said, hey, what are your values? What's important to you? And they were saying, well, protection's important. We want to protect ourselves. And I listened, I empathically listened like we do in the Empathy Circle, and heard what they had to say. And, security is important. And then I connected that value to empathy. I said, so what you're trying to do is, if you're feeling, protection is important, you're protecting yourself against people who aren't empathizing with you. Because if people empathize with you, they hear who you are, they're going to be concerned about your well-being instead of, trying to take your stuff, and you have to have the guns and so forth to protect yourself. And then then they said, oh yeah, I guess empathy is important. Yeah, it's really important. And we kept talking, and then we kind of got onto the same page where we all had empathy as this core value. They understood how it related to their value of protection and safety, which we can all identify with. And then we were on the same page. So in the same way, it's like, how does care relate to empathy? How does integrity relate to empathy? How does honesty relate to empathy? So that's what we want to explore here, is how some of your most important values relate to the value of empathy, and to a broader culture of empathy. So with that, I think we're going to pass it on to, we're going to go into empathy, into our empathy circles in a few minutes, and actually talk about that. That will be the topic. So Dean, are you going to just share the how-to? There you are.
Well, seeing as the time is tight, I'll do a very concise how-to. There are 4 roles. There is the facilitator, who is primarily there to hold the space and to time, to make sure that the timing is notified to everyone. Then there is the role of the active speaker, who speaks for 4 to 5 minutes, pausing occasionally for the person to then reflect, who is the active listener. So the active listener's job is to give their interpretation of what they've heard the person say, and say it to the satisfaction of the speaker. And the speaker will sometimes clarify, and then the active listener will then reflect what the clarification is. And then the final role is the silent listener. Once the time period has finished, then the roles will rotate, because the active speaker will become a silent listener. The active listener will then become the speaker, who will then pick a new active listener from the previous silent listeners. And so in this way, the circle process goes round and round. I'd like to pass it to Edwin to make the breakout rooms. If we're ready to make the breakout rooms. Are you on mute?
There you go. Yeah, there's people dropping in and out with internet connection issues. So I'm just dealing with that too here. So I'm going to post a topic for the empathy circles. It's how does one or more of your values relate to empathy, or a culture of empathy, or, as always, whatever is alive for you. Everyone here is familiar. You've all done empathy circles before, so you don't need too much of an explanation of the how-to. And we're going to have, I think we have 5 circles. So the first one, Anne will facilitate. The second one, Dean will facilitate. And then Larry, and then Graham and Linda. And let me just, Celia had dropped out. And so we're going to go in there. We have an hour and a half for this empathy circle, and then we'll come back for a debrief, and 10 minutes before I'll give you a heads up that we're going to be closing.
So when you say an hour and a half, you mean on the hour, which I think is 12 o'clock Pacific time, right?
Right. So that's about an hour and a half. Yeah, it's 12 p.m. Pacific, but we're all time zones all over the world. So here we go. And so we'll go into our breakout rooms now. And Dean, I'll be here with you in this one. We'll stay in the weight room. Wait here.
Right, so seeing as there's 6 of us in that room
There's
today,
one person who's going to be, Celia is having a little trouble. She's actually going, there she goes. There's 5 of us.
so we'll go to the 4 minutes then. I mean, the 5 minutes instead of the 4 minutes. I was going to have 4 minutes. So I'll set a timer now for 5 minutes for each one of us speaking.
And I'll just mention as a technical heads up, this is the weight room. So if people drop out of another circle, they come back in this, and then I send them to put them back in their room. So there's a little technical stuff that might happen.
So if people pop in and pop out again, you now know why, because they've dropped off, they've come back in, and Edwin will then shuffle them back into their private rooms again. Okay. So what we're going to do is role play. Marta, if you could be the speaker, I will then be the active listener for you, and then we'll then choose other people in the circle to then carry on. So we're just modelling the process for the first time, just to refresh everyone's memory. Topic is, how does one or more of your values relate to empathy, or a culture of empathy, or whatever is alive for you?
Thank you. First of all, I'm happy to see you. It's been a while, Paul, so it's nice being in the same space as you again. I've thought about this topic a lot, not lately, but so for me, there's something, I tend to use the word emergence, but it could be a different word that people might relate with more. For me, of course, there's openness in being, as it was being described, being open towards other people, being open toward yourself. But then there's also this thing about being open to whatever happens, that there's meaning or rightness for the things that happen. I'll pause there.
Okay, so I'm hearing you welcoming to spend some time with Paul again. And I'm hearing you talking about, you've thought about this subject for a long time, but not recently, but yet you still have these deep insights. And one of them is emergence, this emergence, new way of working. And then you clarified it. And I apologize, I've lost that last bit of the clarification.
Yeah, it's a kind of openness to whatever happens, that there's like it comes in emergent strategy, but it's just in general that whatever is the conversation that happens is the right conversation, whatever is the combination. So I suppose it's being empathic to the people, to the space, to the problem, but also to whatever comes.
So I'm hearing you talk about this openness to actual what happens around you, as to just sitting with it and being empathic with it.
Yeah, as opposed to what a certain tendency sometimes we have to want to control things, to want to manage things, to want to fix things, which can be very useful, but it can be less empathic. We're sort of trying to deny what is.
So we have this tendency to want to control things, and sometimes it's not always a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, empathy is soft. For me personally, it's been learning how to be softer, how to not. Yeah.
So I'm hearing you talking about empathy for you being a softer approach rather than the hard approach, which is our current modality.
Thank you, Dean. I feel very heard.
Okay, thank you, Marta. Paul.
Yep.
You're my active listener.
I'd love to.
For me, my core value is acceptance. Accepting people for what they are, not what we want them to be. For a long time, I always wanted to help people to be like me, because I thought me was the only way. But then I realized actually that was very arrogant and totally the wrong approach to ways of working in the new emergent culture of mutuality.
So what I'm hearing, Dean, is that one of your main values is acceptance, and you're saying acceptance of who they are, not who you would like them to be. And you said that previously you had a sense that you were wanting people to be like you, and then you would like them. And that's not the fundamental principle that you agree with.
Yeah, no, that was definitely a problematic start. It was induced by trauma, and it took me a long time to accept the fact that I'd been traumatized. And then once you accept something, it no longer becomes an issue, or it's an issue that's being dealt with rather than an issue that's not being dealt with, which can be detrimental to progression.
So I heard you were saying that that lack of acceptance that you had was really related to trauma, and hearing that you worked through that and you've learned to accept what has happened to you and deal with it, so that then you are more free to accept other people.
Yeah, like Marta, I've come to this conclusion that there's this realization that we must be open to acceptance of the way people want to be rather than the way we'd like them to be, because this is part of that new empathic culture, that new way of working that seeks to listen to others rather than just hear what you want to hear all of them.
Really feeling you're reinforcing this value of openness and really accepting people as they are, listening to who they are. And this key skill of listening is really important to you.
Yeah, and accepting people for their righteous indignation at me, but because they are sitting firmly in their principles, they're just as principled as I am. It's just our principles aren't the same, but acceptance of that principality, it's hard to put into words sometimes, this new way of thinking. We're still inventing the language.
I heard you use the phrase righteous indignation, and then the acceptance of other people's righteous indignation of you, that they might have of you. And what I'm hearing there is another level of acceptance, being okay with wherever anybody's at.
Yeah, it took a year and a bit of empathy circles to actually come to this conclusion that actually, even though they are totally opposed to my principles, they are as principled as I am. So therefore, actually, they're just as good as I am. It's just it's not my good.
I'm hearing it took a bit of work. It took a year and a half, you said, to really come to terms with accepting people for who they are, and their principles may be different to yours, but they're just as valid as yours.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I feel fully heard.
Thank you. Can I just have a clarification of the time that we're using?
We're actually using 5 minutes, unless we actually feel that we've said enough and we want to pause there. We can stop early. We don't have to go to the full 5 minutes.
Great, thank you.
If we get to the 5 minutes and I hold up my phone,
Okay.
that is an indication that the time's finished. Okay.
I just know what time to put on my little timer. Can I, Deborah, would you like to be active listener for me, please?
Yes.
Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, right. So I think one of the values I put down was compassion, and I think this is really important for me because I get a real strong sense of when I'm feeling compassion for somebody and when I'm not. And so the empathy circles gives me a really good training ground, practice ground, and some very good feedback for learning how to become more compassionate.
Okay, so I heard you say that compassion is one of your core values, and it's something that you have a strong inner sense of when you're feeling it and when you're not feeling it. And it sounds like you really value the practice of empathy circles in holding up that compassion of yours.
Mm. Yeah, and I feel it's something that, a bit like exercise, is that I can get fit, but actually just doing it once, one time, isn't going to keep it going. So it's something to constantly practice, and regular training and practice in empathy circles is, I think, a really good staple for anything regarding facilitating others.
Yeah. Okay, so I hear you comparing it to compassion being like a muscle, and kind of, if you don't use it, you'll lose it, kind of thing. Yeah, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for me, there is this real sense relating to what Dean was saying, is that there's some work to do in terms of really being able to be compassionate with some people. So that's something I really want to take on.
So you're also, what Dean was saying, you resonated with that there's work to do around feeling compassion with people with differences. Yeah, was that what you were saying?
Yeah, and it takes time, and it's something I want to practice. And I think this environment is very supportive of that. And I think it's those other levels that I also heard other people mentioning is being able to really accept where other people are, not just as a and on a really deep level, just not just a token gesture. Oh yeah, I've heard you. I think you still think you're crazy. No, there's more work to do. If you still think they're crazy, there's more work to do to really understand and, empathize with them. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're reflecting on that this takes work and it takes time and practice, and to go down to those deeper levels of compassion where it's beyond tokenism, and so you're kind of not at the stage where you're not still left judging them. You really get them.
Yeah, thank you. And on just continuing that theme, I think there's something there about being okay with people thinking not so great things about me, and that might be where they're at, and I have to accept that as well. And that's the next level, which I'd like to really work on too.
So you're also wanting to progress to feeling kind of an acceptance and okayness with other people not being okay with you. So I'm not sure if I've explained that very well, reflected that well. Is that?
Yeah. No, that was perfect. Yeah, exactly those words. And I think that's always going to be the case as well. There's going to be different types of understanding of who we are, and being at peace with that, and still seeing the humanity within each person.
I'm not quite sure. I think could you rephrase that, please? Could you?
Yeah, I think it is around. I'm just referring back to why it's so important to be able to be okay with people who are not okay with you, because that's always going to be the case. Not everybody's going to see my perspective and values as being important as their own. But I, especially as a facilitator, want to be okay with that, so that they know that I'm okay with them having that view.
Yeah, yeah. So you're recognizing that those issues are always going to be around with people, and it's something you want to get really comfortable with. You want to get almost like comfortable with people's uncomfortableness with you, maybe.
Perfect. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay. Can I choose Edwin?
Yep, listening.
Okay. So I put down one of my values as mindfulness, and I'm thinking, well, actually, that's a skill as well, because I'm just what I came to learn as well through doing the empathy circles was it really does put me in touch with the present. The present and presence with that person that I'm listening to.
Yeah, so your one of your values is mindfulness. You see it as a process or a skill as well, and you find that the empathy circle actually puts you in touch, with someone, perhaps sort of in a mindful way.
Absolutely, yeah, because I'm having to totally focus on what they're saying and not be thinking about fixing them or what I'm going to say next. It's really putting me in touch with the present moment, which is wonderful.
Yeah, so you're seeing that in the empathy circle, you have to focus on the person you're listening to. You can't be thinking about a lot of things. And so it's very mindful and it's very present with what's happening in the moment. And it just feels like a wonderful experience.
Yeah. And I guess, that is a value of mine, because I can get, there is a tendency for me to get a bit too cognitive, if you like. And so any practice that brings me back to my body and my sensing and my feeling and being present is good.
So
for me and others.
Yeah, so you think you tend to get too cognitive, and getting into your body and is something that's a positive feeling, positive thing to do.
Yeah, for me and the other person.
Oh, for both of you. Yeah, for you and the other person.
Yeah. And then one of the other things that I wrote down, just this expression, embracing vulnerability. And I think what these empathy circles allow you to do is to be vulnerable in a safe space, because I know I'm going to be heard. And it's okay to bring my vulnerable side. And I think that's really good for supporting a culture of empathy, that I think people can become very disconnected because they're trying to protect or shield themselves from something. And so I think being comfortable with being vulnerable is a healthy step to take.
So you're seeing that the empathy circle also helps you to be more vulnerable, that sort of instead of having to protect yourself like people do, that you can actually just share your own experience.
Yeah. And I'm reminded of that great TED talk that Brené Brown did. Yeah. It just made so much sense. If we build like a hard shell around ourselves and have this persona and we're not being congruent, how are we going to communicate properly? So I think these empathy circles are just a fantastic way to break that down.
So people like from Brené Brown was talking about vulnerability, and if you have this hard shell, you're kind of playing a role, etc. That that it's better to be open and vulnerable and share what's really going on for you, and you feel that the empathy circle moves you in that direction.
Yeah. And also it counterbalances my perfectionist streak as well, because something that I battle with, and so it's a good reminder. I don't have to be perfect.
Yeah, so it's also you're dealing with perfectionism. It's like, I don't have to be perfect here. So it's like a counter to it.
Yeah, I can relax.
Relaxing. Yeah. And does that mean you were fully heard, or you're just relaxing?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm feeling fully heard. Thank you very much, Edwin. Thank you.
Speak to Dean then.
Martha,
actually, I'm going to speak to Martha. Yeah, I just realized that she was one that went first. So yeah. So
Listening.
Yeah, I really enjoy these discussions where we talk about the values and how they relate to empathy, because think it's really helpful to have sort of a map to even be aware of that, so when we relate to other people, and that you can kind of connect what's happening to the value of empathy.
So you find this conversation very useful, and that you even think it'd be good that it's good having a map, having an idea of how each individual relates to the values and to empathy, so that when they come together, they can map it out in relation to each other.
Yeah, it's helpful for just discussing empathy, because I'm like trying to promote it, say, hey, empathy is important for the culture, and then to be able to relate it to these different values helps sort of make the case for it.
So when you're promoting empathy, then having this understanding of how it relates to the other values that people hold, it helps you in making a case for it.
And I really, what came up, about openness and acceptance of it's a little bit of a different area, is just being, I hadn't thought of the openness and sort of being open to just what is. There's openness to what is in myself, openness to what is in others. Yeah, just that awareness of it's just whatever is arising, to see what is arising. So just sort of sitting with that.
So
I
you
was a little
hadn't
muddled, but yeah.
So you hadn't considered it before, like openness from the angle of just being present with whatever is arising, but inside of you and in the surrounding.
Yeah, and it's also what else is there? I mean, I took notes on everybody's values, so I was trying to kind of relate, kind of think about each of these different values. So I'm just sort of thinking about that.
Yeah, so you took notes of what people shared, and you're sort of trying to map those out as well, how they connect with each other.
Yeah, and for some reason, I'm thinking about the being with what is, and I don't know if I should share this, but Dean was doing a mediation, and it kind of blew up, and it kind of blows up when you kind of feel attacked. And and then you get kind of triggered, and you can't just be with what is, kind of just empathize with what is. So somehow I'm still kind of thinking about that, and in mediation it kind of helps to just be with where the person is, and just be able to keep from getting fearful, being, yeah.
So you're referring back to a situation that Dean went through, and you sort of wondering whether sure or not, but it was to do with a conflict situation in mediation, and when it blows up, to be present with it. There's might be responsive reaction, all of that, but to just be a bit more, to just be present to whatever happens.
Yeah, and then I just wonder, because I know that with my partner, it's great to talk about empathy, but with my partner, we got in an argument recently. I just got so frustrated, like with what Dean was talking about. He's like, okay, you're not going to, yeah, let me just move. Yeah, there she went back to the room. Yeah, so it's so that quality of how do things blow up with the listening, right? You were listening. And what is it that, is causing me to stop being empathic? And I think it's the mutuality. It's having an agreement in advance that, hey, let's have a mutually empathic relationship, right? It's when it's sort of when it feels one-sided, then it kind of blows up more easily.
Okay, so you're thinking about this also in relation to a situation you were with your partner, where you've got all this understanding of empathy, and even then it got the better of you. And so you're thinking maybe one thing can be that if there was a previous agreement for mutual understanding, that might help people stay present and continue to empathize instead of
yeah, and that's why mutuality is so important. I think it's just too hard to do empathy when it's just one way. Like, I'm going to do all the listening, so it's the mutuality, I think, is central. I think that's really what we're showing in the empathy circle, is like, hey, let's have a mutual agreement of mutuality. And it just helps so much in terms of the relating. And even then it gets hard, you know, even when you have that mutuality, but yeah, it's totally important.
So you're saying that that's for you, that the mutuality is really an important piece, and that you feel it's reflected also in this practice, and that if that is there, then you've got a lot more room to withstand whatever comes your way, because you can be held by that mutuality.
I feel fully heard. Thanks, Marta.
Paul, may I speak to you, please? I think all of, you know, the vulnerability, all these things, they are skills that that one can train. And some people will have it easier than others because of the life history or personality or whatever it is, but that I find that hopeful that it's something we train.
Sorry, just on mute. Here you mention vulnerability, and that your experience is that is something that you mentioned all that. Also, there were skills, the skills of that involved here as well, and you also mentioned about their personal history might affect how easy it is for you or somebody else to work and develop those skills. I think that's what you were referring to. Forgive me if not.
No, thank you, Paul. And it's, for me, these are just practices of nonviolence. That's why it's so important in XR. Yeah. It's, how can I learn, preferentially in community like this, but you know, but even if it's meditation, whatever, how can I learn to have not control, but understanding of my inner seas, of my inner weather, of, yeah.
So non-violence is fundamental to you, and you were also talking about learning in community, so a real draw to the learning environment that Empathy Circles provides, and to understanding what's going on in the inside of both of you and other people. The inner seams is one phrase you used.
Yeah. And what something that helps me with, yeah, I don't know so much about mutuality, but one thing that helps me with that staying present is this understanding of space and like space, time. It's all very relative, and I could get upset, I could not get upset, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't really matter. You know, I don't know if that's quite abstract.
Well, I'll have a go. I'm hearing a lot about presence. You mentioned space and time, and it's about really being with what's there and noticing whether you're upset or not. What's your reaction? Again, it's just really being present to what is.
Yeah, so that it's, I think it's not always easy, but for me, when I feel myself being triggered, this is not about me. You know, I'm like a little grain of sand. I could be here, I could not be here, but this is not about me.
Yeah, I hear you saying it's not, you don't find it easy, and also getting that that's something that you like about the challenge, and that a big part of it is learning it's not about you. So you're a small grain of sand in the big vastness of the cosmos, and is really hearing about tuning into that rather than just the individual reactions.
Thank you for trying to make me make sense. Thank you, Paul. It's very hard.
An honor. Dean, would you like to be my active listener?
Certainly, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I was going to talk about openness. It's another value. And this is another fundamental for, I'm really interested in democratic, mutual, collective decision making. And how are you ever going to do that if you can't facilitate a safe space that people are able to be open and really bring what they've got? So it's such a fundamental for that.
So you're talking about another one of the core understandings about the empathy culture, which is openness, and about how, if you're, which is what you're doing, taking part in institutionalizing this new deliberative democracy, how can you hold a safe space unless you're open to other people and welcoming them into this new space you're creating?
Yeah, because part of that collective decision-making process is to be able to get all perspectives taken into account and considered by everybody else as much as possible. So that requires full participation, and participating is being open about what's going on for you.
So in these new collective spaces, it's really important to be open and able to hear and be present with other people's viewpoints, because that's all part of the process of the new forms of democracy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I can, as a facilitator, provide a space where I can be heard and other people can be heard by the other people, everybody is getting this sense of mutual understanding, again, because they're being open with each other. If you haven't got any of that openness, then there's no chance of them understanding each other.
So in this new collective way, it's really important for this openness. Everyone's got to be open to everyone else, because otherwise there'll be no mutual understanding.
Yeah, and thinking what more to say there is about participation. I think there's something around learning in these empathy circles to really hear and understand where somebody's at. And I'm also really interested in learning how much of that is needed to deal with the task at hand, whatever decision making it is for that particular group. For example, when it's not a pure empathy circle, there is actually we've got to make a decision here. So that's something else that I think the value of openness is going to be key for.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you're thinking about how this process that's used in the cafe can be used in this collective spaces for allowing everyone to deeply hear each other, rather than just here to compete to say what they want to say, to actually hear to understand.
Yeah, that's right. Just see what else comes about this participation. I think the openness is also what I'm interested in inquiring into is how, of course, we get that openness, and what we need to do as facilitators to make people feel really safe that they can then be open. And this is a really great playground for that inquiry.
So I'm hearing you enjoying the potential of exploring these new ways of creating open spaces so that people will actually feel safe and open up to allow this deliberative space to function.
Thank you. Feel fully heard.
10 seconds, nicely done. Deborah, are you?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You went on mute, so I wasn't quite sure.
I know. My mouse dropped off my lap and I grabbed at it and it whisked it off. Anyway, so here we go.
Okay.
I'm going to follow on from what Paul's been talking about, because I very much into this idea of deliberative democracy, and I do really think that listening quietly to actually hear someone is one of these key skills we've got to teach at the beginning of any of the citizens' assemblies and people's assemblies that we're going to hold, if they're to truly get to the deep root of that conjoined thinking, that group consciousness.
Okay, so you're following on from Paul's talking about these deliberative democracies, and you're honing on that the key skill will be to listen, and that's something that's got to be there from the start if it's going to have a hope of working.
Yeah, because in a citizens' assembly, you've got to be open to everyone's point of view. That's the whole point about them, is this openness to others, rather than just openness to your preconceived ideas of what you think you understand. You're open to, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. So therefore, this collective consciousness can develop.
So with these citizens' assemblies, it's really important that that openness is extended to everyone. Openness to other people's ideas, all perspectives, to enable to facilitate this group consciousness cohesion.
Yeah, and it's going to be done in a radical, inclusive way, because quite often those who speak the quietest have the most powerful thing to say. So you need to be aware as a facilitator who has spoken and who hasn't, and then if someone asks to be included who hasn't spoken before, to then bump them up to the top of the queue.
Right. So I'm hearing, as a facilitator, it sounds like you've got to be aware of who hasn't spoken and that they might have something really important to say, and to help give them a platform to hear their voice, and so that they can contribute.
This is why I think XR have been like at my university, or my second university, because I've learned so many skill sets from others who are giving their time freely, that you learn this actually, that there is this benefit to doing something for no apparent gain that is a bigger gain than you would get through being paid for something.
So your experience with XR has been like doing a second degree, going to university again, and the benefits, the gains are far bigger than what you'd thought they were originally.
Yeah, because if you see people giving up their time freely and their skills for free, you just it instigates and instills within you this circular thinking that you don't always have to profit at someone else's gift. You can actually profit out of someone's generosity. So therefore, you're more open to be more generous yourself.
So I hear you really seeing the value in people giving their time freely, and it's like that's kind of inspired you. It's generating more involvement, more participation, allowing things to grow.
Yeah, I'm a great fan of the cashless economy and the circular modality. The days of the linear reductionist thinking, as far as I'm concerned, they are the toxicity that we, with the empathic listening, are going to make redundant, because others are just going to say, well, that's a silly way of doing things. Let's move on to this other way.
So you're aware of the toxicity of old linear economic systems, and your great support of the gift economy or cashless society. and that you see that these empathy circles, was that right, are a way of spreading that? Yeah.
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 Literally just by
For it
being
to become-
empathic with others, and not
Yeah.
making demands upon others.
Mm.
It instills this new culture.
Yeah. Yeah. So the process of empathy will help to sort of regenerate this. Oh, sorry, I've lost it there. So it's almost like the more we give freely, the more freely it will become circular. Yeah.
Yes, basically, yes. The more we give, the more we get.
Yeah.
Rather than the more we expect, the less
Mm.
we'll get.
Mm. Yeah. So yeah, the energy is kind of recycled by not what we're expecting, but by what we give, in a way. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Deborah. I feel fully heard.
Thank you. Paul, can you listen to me? Hi,
Yep.
Paul. Yeah. I'm not sure what I want to. What's alive for me at the moment? Lots of things are alive for me at the moment. I've moved to a completely new area, to a new village, from a town to a village a couple of months ago, and my life has just radically changed completely in many ways.
So you're not sure, you weren't sure what to talk about, but what's coming is the fact that you've recently just moved to a new village just a couple of months ago from a town. So your life has radically changed.
Yeah, and it's just like everything I've ever wanted. I've really wanted to be part of a close-knit community of people that look out for each other, and that's what there is here. It's wonderful. Just day-to-day things, like someone's pop into the shops and they'll put on the messenger, oh, does anybody want anything from the shops? And someone else will say, oh, could you pick up my prescription? And it's just lovely how they all care for each other here.
So maybe you're sort of saying that it's kind of all you've ever wanted. You've got this really great connected community, and an example of that is when somebody might run an errand and they pop it onto the group, and people can join in and get help.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'd lived, I was, for about 14 years, I was unhappy living where I was living. So it could, yeah, it was a long time. So I just feel in this absolute sort of honeymoon period as well, having left where I was living and unhappy, and then moved to this new place with friendly people who smile at me and greet me. That's great.
Getting a real sense of joy and relief after 14 years living in a place you weren't particularly happy with. All of a sudden you're in this new space which feels like a real honeymoon to you, and you're around friendly people.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just kind of propelled all this energy in me as well. And so I'm doing this forest gardening course, and I've taken up archery again. So I've joined a local archery group, something I really enjoy doing. I'm about to be making lots of bunting for a stall, for the village stall day. So yeah, there's all this kind of alive activity, and yeah, it's very exciting.
I'm really getting your energy and your renewed energy from your new position. your new living situation. You got the forest gardening course going on, which sounds brilliant. The archery you started again. You're even making bunting. Yeah, it's a really amazing picture you're painting.
Yeah, yeah. And I do need to be careful that I don't crash and burn as well, having taken all these projects on. Just keep an eye on it. Because as well as the forest gardening, I'm doing this course again, and then my boss at work has funding me to run empathy circles for carers, and I'm doing my first session tomorrow. Really excited about that. Because that's very much a core value, is caring and kindness, and these carers have just been so burnt out during this pandemic, and I'm just really pleased that I can offer them a space for them to unload and be heard.
So I'm really getting care is a really big theme in what you just said. Particularly care for yourself, so you don't get carried away, you don't overwhelm yourself, with all this new stuff going on. So I'm really getting you all aware of that. And you're also going to be looking after, when you were talking about your work with your boss, to actually run some empathy circles for some carers, so that they can really take on that as well, that you're taking on yourself.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I feel fully heard. Thank you, Paul.
Just one technical note. There's a group, room 5. It looks like somebody dropped out and Julia tried to get back and hasn't come back. And they only have 3 participants. So is there anyone that would want to go to that room to sort of fill? It's kind of hard with just 3 people in the group. I don't know if anybody.
I can go, Edwin, if you like.
Okay.
Just move me over.
Great, then I'll move you there.
Bye, Marta.
See you soon.
Thanks, Martha, for stepping in.
Are we good to go, Edwin?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Would you be okay to be my listener?
Yes, listening.
I'm just reflecting on what other values are really important to me in empathy circles. I wrote down equality, and I'm just inquiring into what's coming for me about equality. I think it's linked to the other ones I've mentioned, but just making sure that there is that space for everybody, and that might mean different things for each person who's there.
So you're sensing into your values, and the one that's coming up is equality, and that's just having space for everyone, and that sort of means different things to different people.
Yeah. And the other thing comes with that inquiry is the tracking of privilege, and all the other things that society imparts a bias onto because of our cultural heritage, so race, social position, economic position, gender, the lot really, and how that would mean that people need different things in terms of being heard and being given a voice.
Yeah, so it's in terms of equality, there's all these different factors in terms of economic, racial, just a lot of different factors, and maybe equality means different things. That people have maybe different needs, and they need to sort of be equal. They maybe need different things.
Because I think ultimately, if I'm facilitating a collective decision between a group of people, it wouldn't be necessarily equal in terms of time. I mean, somebody might need more time to articulate themselves than somebody who's very trained in being articulate, and they might only need 30 seconds to express their point, where somebody else might need three or 4 minutes. and it might need a bit of drawing out, and that's all skill in terms of awareness and empathy skills with the facilitator who's holding that space.
So when you're facilitating a group and you're wanting it to be equal, you would maybe need to give more time to someone who's not so verbal or able to express themselves, and they might need more support. And so you're just sort of thinking about that.
Yeah, what comes from that is that an awareness of my own lack of understanding, so which I'm really become more present to recently, certainly with XR work, is that, you know, I'm just not even aware of some of the challenges that some people, some cultures and communities have to deal with. So there's that aspect of me understanding and knowing that I might need time to understand, and then I might still never understand fully because I'm not them.
Mm-hmm. So you're seeing that, like, in these situations, you might not understand all the needs that people have, especially like for equality, and it's almost like a sense of that maybe you never will be able to really understand what their needs are. Maybe some regret about that or some pain about that.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important to acknowledge, you know, that I'm never really going to fully understand, and it's right that I'm not, because otherwise, you know, they could explain their entire life in 10 minutes, which is never going to be the case. But the other aspect of this, I think, is facilitating other people in the group understanding other people in the group. So it's not just me understanding, but it's cultivating that mutual understanding in the group.
So you would like to be able to facilitate a group where you understand the participants, but also where they understand each other. And so that's kind of a different sort of aspects of the sort of the skills that you'd like to have.
Thanks, Edwin.
Okay. Oh, you've got your own timer. Very clever. Dean, speak to you.
Certainly, Edwin.
Yeah. The value that was coming up for me as I was thinking is feelings, and it's not in the list. And I've thought a lot about it, you know, and I think that it sort of would be important to add that to the list of core values, is sort of awareness and sensitivity to felt experience.
So I'm hearing you've come up with this new word, which is feelings, and it's due to sensitivity of thoughts and emotions.
Yeah, it's that what is the felt experience we have? And I mean, I've thought a lot about it. It's, you know, thinking of it, I haven't been able to really articulate it well, because, you know, empathy actually, the origination means to feel into. So it's to be sensitive to felt experience, because typical rationality is very, you know, it's sort of, has a logic, a structure and a rigidity maybe to it, whereas empathic reason is including the felt experience and being sensitive to being able to express and also to name felt experience, which is related to, you know, who everyone is.
So the felt experience is something that is not necessarily communicated or understood by the old modalities of thinking, which were rigid. And the empathy comes from leaning into or walking towards someone else's set of personal feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why you feel that the word feeling should be something that's included.
Yeah, it's being open to my own feelings, like, hey, what am I feeling in the moment? You know, I'm feeling a little tired, feeling a little low energy, feeling, you know, there's a little bit of anxiety when the group first started, still have that because everything's new for a lot of the trainees. And it's like, oh, so there's a bit of anxiety, low energy. And I'm noticing sort of a low energy in general. So yeah, I just sort of, those are some of the feelings that come up for me.
So some of your feelings that are present with you at the moment are this sense of anxiety, of this newness for other people, and there's general sort of malaise you can feel.
And it's the, you know, the word acceptance, like that's the reality. That's what is. It's just, you know, it's like we don't have to entertain everybody and raise everybody's energy level. It's like, hey, there's this malaise. That's the reality, folks. Just being with it. And that's sort of the sense of acceptance, right? Like, oh, it's not always, it's always not roses and whatever.
So I'm hearing you speak to let's not make it all fluffy and woolly and lovely. Let's actually be ready to be sat in the reality of where we are. And sometimes it's not a pleasant place.
Yeah, sometimes it's very unpleasant, and that's sort of what the openness is, right? It's like, hey, it's like sometimes I have fear, right? Anxiety is like, oh, if it's not all roses, fluffy and roses, it's like people say, hey, I don't want to be around here. It's like, this is too heavy for me. I'm going to run away. So you kind of, there's a bit of anxiety, like, oh, people are going to run away because they're not being entertained or something, you know? So that's another feeling that sort of arises, that, oh, anxiety.
So I'm hearing you speak of anxiety, but in the form of insecurity. I mean, will they stay around if this is not entertaining enough or friendly enough for them?
Yeah. So, and I think that's also in terms of democracy, which Paul is, you know, working on, is that that's something that's been left out, is the feelings. That it's usually when you hear democracy, at least in America, you're taught civics, like how the structure, the political structure is, but they don't teach how to, it's not talked about, you know, how to relate, people to relate with each other and hear each other and understand the meaning that everything, the felt experience and the meaning experience has. You know, why is it important? There's a feeling behind why things are important to people.
I'm hearing you talk about the social structuring of democracy at the moment, especially in America, and how it's lacking that fundamental human need, which is the feelings, that feeling element.
Yeah. So it's just that whole space of felt experience. You know, vulnerability is being open to how you're really feeling, it seems to me, in the moment. And that's what openness is about, is like how to be open. And so there's a lot of work still I want to do around, you know, navigating the feeling landscape, getting better at it.
So I'm hearing you criticizing yourself again for not being as good an expert as you feel you should be, and wanting to include these new things constantly, which is growing the empathic culture. And you're always looking to incorporate these new things that you're coming across.
Yeah, it's not so much criticizing, but kind of a yearning for it, I would say.
So it's this yearning for more inclusivity to grow the empathic culture.
The feelings.
The feelings in the empathic culture.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I can't remember if I spoke to you, Deborah. I think I have, haven't I? Paul, have I spoken to you yet? Paul, have you been my
first one? Yeah, but I'm happy to be again.
Well, I haven't actually spoken to Edwin then, because if I've spoken to you two, I haven't spoken to Edwin. So I've got to go back to Edwin then, because got to speak to everyone.
I'm hearing you really want to speak to everyone, and so you're choosing me.
Yep, it's all part of this Paul modality of the deliberative democracy and the inclusiveness that we need to develop as this culture of empathy.
Yeah, so you really want to talk to me, but you want to be inclusive and speak to everyone, especially related to this whole democratic, you know, mindset.
Because, I mean, openness and inclusivity are the two of my most core fundamental understanding needs of what's wrong with our culture at the moment. And we need to build those skill sets as part of everyone's normal tool bag in order to enable people to see and be with each other.
Yeah, so you really want to get those skills or mindsets of openness, and I think it was, I can't remember what the other one was. It needs to be sort of core.
Openness, and oh gosh, I've forgotten that.
You forgot your own values.
Openness and inclusiveness. I believe they were the two.
Inclusivity. So openness and inclusivity. Everybody needs to learn these. We need this for democracy.
Especially me.
Yeah.
No, I mean literally, because if we're just sitting in our own space and thinking that's the only space, then we are literally shut off from anyone else's observations, anyone else's point of view. And I've learned as I've got older that actually my weaknesses are actually someone else's strengths. So by actually being open about my weakness, I can then find someone to hopefully enable me to turn that weakness into a strength by facilitating my growth in that area.
So if you can be open about what's happening with you, even if it feels like it's a weakness, that when other people hear that, it somehow turns into a strength then.
Yeah, because by admitting my weakness, it opens the door for others to then actually say, oh, I feel vulnerable and weak too occasionally. Because if we all sit there going, I'm big and strong and I know exactly what I'm doing, then nothing changes. And that's the toxic culture that we need to overcome.
Yeah, so sharing your being open and vulnerable and sharing what might be considered a weakness, or what you even maybe consider a weakness, that's sort of what the culture is about. And if we want to change the culture, we're going to have to start being more open and transparent.
Yeah, because by exposing ourselves, hopefully we can get others to open up, and then we can then enter into that deeper understanding and that mutuality of the collective consciousness. And then that collective consciousness is greater than the sum of the individual parts.
Yeah, so it's there's I had left it out and I got distracted because somebody messaged me. Could you repeat that again?
Okay, so basically, paraphrasing myself now, that if we are open to other people's ways of thinking and we're inclusive, then actually we can develop this collective consciousness which is greater than the sum of the individual parts.
Yeah, so you actually started by, hey, if I can be more open and transparent and vulnerable, that allows other people to be more open, transparent, and vulnerable. And then we can really be more than just our individual selves. We're sort of the sum of, greater than the sum of our parts of ourselves.
Yeah, because literally through this talking process and hearing and being heard, we can then actually start to then debate in a deliberative way rather than a confrontational way. And that's why I think this listening process and the circular talking that we do with a limited time frame makes people see themselves down to their salient parts rather than just waffling.
So this practice that we're doing kind of lets people get to their core quicker versus, into the important part of who they are.
Yeah, because I could waffle for half an hour and say nothing. But if I know I've got 5 minutes, I have to then refine what I'm going down to say to that nugget of truth.
So having a time limit, you actually have to get to the point quicker and get to the essence of what's important.
Yeah, thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay, I'll speak to Deborah. Yeah, there was, I just gotten a message from the other group where we sent Martha, and they were grateful for Martha coming because when there's just 3 people in a group, it's a little hard. So I just got a message from Linda that some gratitude for sending Martha.
Yeah. Sounds like you're pleased that you heard from the other group. They were grateful to receive Martha.
Yeah, and then there's another group, somebody dropped out. And I'm thinking I should go to the other group. There's another group with 5. Maybe I'll go over there quickly and see if someone will join that group for the last 20 minutes. So I'm just juggling all this technical stuff in the background. It's kind of
yeah. So I can see, you're a bit distracted, keeping an eye on other groups and. Yeah.
So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go over there, just manage that. And then I feel fully heard with that.
Okay.
I'll come back.
All right. So you're going to go off and do that now.
I see Edwin's just popped in.
Hi, Edwin.
Hi, sorry to interrupt, but there's one group where they're missing a person. Somebody had dropped out. And I was wondering, you have 5 in this group, if someone would be willing to go over there, because when it's just 3, it's not quite so. Would somebody volunteer to go to that group? I can move you over.
I could do that.
Shy.
Okay.
Oh, it said it was just your go, Tiaho, and you haven't had many goes.
Okay.
Are you good with that? Moving?
Shy,
no,
are you happy to move?
What?
If you write.
Yeah, I'll move Tiaho over there then. So yeah, it's just
Shy, what were you saying, Shy?
Yes, sure. Yes, I can move because she was
I
just
already
about
moved
to.
Tiaho. Sorry, I thought
No, she was just about to speak.
Oh,
I'm a bit concerned because she hasn't had much chance to speak yet, but hopefully she'll sort that out in the new group.
yeah. So I'm gonna leave. So thanks for that. It
Thanks,
just kinda
Edwin.
helped. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so and now then it was Tiaho's turn. Ron, I suggest we pass so that it's your turn to speak and you choose a listener.
Okay. Thank you, Ian.
The sociocracy you got from your forest gardening course.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm thinking, slow down. Don't join more groups. Yeah. I think I put down kindness as one of my values. And that's a whole massive topic because kindness, this is going to sound a bit weird, but maybe kindness isn't always about seeming to be kind. You know, in your facilitator role, it's sometimes about being direct and helping put people back on track. But you can do it in a kind way. Yeah.
So you started off by saying all this excitement about stuff. You also remembered that you needed to slow down and not take on too much and look after yourself. And then you were talking about another big value is kindness. It's a big topic, and you started mentioning around as a facilitator that might take different guises, particularly being really direct, you know, the kind of loving kindness type of honesty, I think I was hearing.
So not being not being afraid to stop people if they're doing something that's outside the practice and not helpful. Yeah. Feeling comfortable with challenging people.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing there that there's this awareness of responsibility to create a space with firm boundaries. So you're really being kind to people as a collective, and not being, you know, that includes being honest and clear with them and challenging if necessary, authentic.
Yeah. Yeah, I spent many years as a people pleaser, I might say. When I first got into group facilitations, that was years ago, I ran parenting courses, and that was one of the things that I really had to work on was get over my fear of challenging people. Yeah.
So you mentioned the phrase people pleasing. You've got some historical experience of desire to fit in and not to challenge people too much, but you know, in the parenting group, that's something you really took on. You know, realizing that you can serve people by sometimes challenging them.
Yeah. There's a phrase that comes to mind. I don't know who said it, but people people don't break. Sometimes they gladly let go of old habits. I like that. Mm. Mm.
People don't break, they can let go of old habits.
Mm. And I think just the whole, this deepness that you can enter into with someone in listening to them, this deep dialogue it's a total act of kindness to really make room for that person and give them your all, give them all your ears, your attention.
So a real sense of kindness being in the space of being in deep dialogue with somebody is one of the kindest things you could do for somebody.
Yeah.
Really hear that.
Thank you. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Dean, you up for a bit of listening?
Paul, certainly.
Right. Okay. Something around, I was really touched by some of the vulnerability being expressed. I know Edwin was saying about some of the ways he's feeling about the course and his care for people. And then some of the things other people have said, just really presencing this value of vulnerability, giving, and what that does to a space to make it more open for people. If I can be vulnerable, if we can be vulnerable, then it gives people a space to also share things.
I'm hearing you resonate with this core belief that we have of presenting vulnerability into a space which will facilitate other people to then be vulnerable themselves in this space.
So I'm really, again, just really excited actually about that inquiry, about how the different ways that I could create those spaces potentially if I learned the skills, and that is a never-ending inquiry. You're never going to learn that fully. There's always going to be a different response or way to do that with each group. So an acknowledgement of that, and that's actually quite exciting, because you don't want to learn something that's, oh, I've done that, tick that, I can do that now. It becomes quite boring. But actually this is all about constantly reaching out and creating a new space for new people.
So I'm hearing you talk to this authenticity of the desire to grow this space in a way that's a lifelong journey, rather than just, oh, it's a skill set I've learned, oh, now I know this skill set.
The other thing that really excites me about facilitating is that this, I think I was hearing somebody else say that I find it hard to be empathetic, and to still react to people who have different views. I think it's something you said, actually, Dean. And actually, when you're facilitating a group, there's a real empowering context to be on your very strongly most aware. It's a very structural incentive to really listen for the humanity. And I've noticed that it feels in that situation a bit easier, because you're being called. It's almost as if the group is holding that for you as well, which is really quite something special.
So I'm hearing you speak about this vulnerability being actually empowering, because in the safe space that's created, it allows this to be expressed.
Yeah, I think it's particularly around so, for example, if I'm having a conversation with somebody I know well, like say my parents, I might get triggered a lot more easily and descend into reactionary stuff. Whereas if you're in front of a group, there's a real empowering context because they have an expectation of you. It feels to change the dynamic for me a little bit. And also, you can't, if you get it wrong, you really mess up. So that's another real structural incentive, to really hear the humanity behind what people are saying.
So I'm hearing you talk to this empowering factor of the fact that when you're talking to a group rather than say your family, which you can just get triggered all the time, you have to be far more present, and actually that's an empowering, enlightening process, that you're being held to account, because if you make a mistake, you can have a bigger dynamic, and it can have a bigger repercussive effect in the group. So you have to be on your toes all the time and aware of your own shadow self, to constantly being looking at, but it's an empowering thing to be doing at the same time.
Yeah. I think it's about upping the game, isn't it? It's like if you get promoted to a next level of football team and then all the players are much better, you've got to be better yourself. So so that kind of empowerment, I think, is exciting.
So I'm hearing you saying that it's like going up in the divisions of a football club. You go from the low leagues to the mid leagues to then the Premier Leagues. So each time you go up to another different awareness level, it's holding you to account. So therefore, it's an exciting, reinvigorating challenge almost.
Steve, fully heard.
Deborah.
Hi.
Yes, this stepping up a league. Whilst it's empowering, it can be a big problem, because when you encounter something for the first time in the higher divisions, you can make a big mistake. But if we're prepared to admit our fallibilities, then that vulnerability to our fallibility hopefully will then, once we've expressed that to that person, be able to re-establish their faith in us as a facilitator to actually get the job done.
So you're just reflecting on the enormity of stepping up, Nick on the chopping block. And yet, if we can embrace that vulnerability with it, then that could actually deepen the relationship in some way. You're talking.
Yeah, I'm speaking to my experience as trying to be a mediator, and
Right.
when I actually mediated very badly, instead of just reflecting, I took it as a personal attack, which I shouldn't have done. Hopefully this is going to be the only time it's going to happen that way, because I'll have learned from that experience to not actually take things personally. And then when I've apologized and sought recompense with that person, hopefully we can then build a more sure footing for carrying on that process.
So you're reflecting on a mediation experience that you had where you made some mistakes, and the feedback you got, you took too personally rather than taking it as a learning experience. And it sounds like you're hoping for an opportunity for a bit more reparation to go ahead, to be going on.
So we're gonna have a mediation of the mediator, and then hopefully that will allow the mediator to learn from their mistakes and not make that same mistake again.
So you're going to have a second meeting on the mediation, and you're hoping that so I was a bit confused about the last bit. Is it someone else who's you're hoping will learn from their mediation mistakes, or?
No, I will learn
from
the mediation mistakes, and hopefully re-establish the trust that person originally had in me, to give me the privilege of being a mediator, and the responsibility of that position of being the mediation party.
Yeah. So you're hoping that this next meeting will bring about, will be more restorative, and that the trust will be there for you to have another go at doing it.
Yes. I mean, it's like we've all spoken to before. It's everything's a learning experience, and it's okay learning something intellectually, but until you learn it emotionally, you haven't truly learnt it. You've only learned a bit of it. So it's important to learn the whole of it, and your emotions are part of that whole.
Yeah. So you're reflecting, on the learning process. You're not just learning on an intellectual level. You're learning experientially, emotionally. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Deborah. Feel fully heard.
Okay. So if I to be listened to, Edwin, how are we doing?
But I think you're choosing me.
Yeah,
Well,
I saw a message come up saying, how much time do we have?
6 minutes left. So there's enough time for you to do one turn.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I was just checking in to see if there's anything more I want to say about values. But actually, what is alive for me is just as Dean was talking about mediation. I have actually put a proposal to. There's another online community I'm involved with, and it's kind of it's remorphing. So the people who are running it don't want to run it anymore, and a new group of people are coming in, and so they're making up. They're in the stages of discussing governance and about moderating and stuff like that. And I just put myself forward and said, well, I've been doing these empathy circles, so maybe this is a way that could be used for, if any mediation is needed.
So there's a group that's sort of morphing. There's a new leadership coming in, and you're part of that. And you've put it out there that you would be available for doing empathy circles or mediation, and just let them know that.
Yeah. Even though I haven't had a direct experience of mediating in an empathy circle situation, I have actually, throughout my years of facilitating parent groups and many years working with children, lots of conflict always there with children. Yeah, so it's not something I'm completely new to, but it's I'm also aware it's not. I've not been a mediator in an empathy circle situation either.
So you haven't been a mediator in an empathy circle per se, but you've done a lot of sort of related work with children and parenting groups. So you have a lot of other experience, related experience.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that's something I feel really pleased about. And I'm also aware, though, that there is that part of me when I was in this meeting the other day, and I touched in this sort of lack of confidence feeling. So, yeah, it's like, I haven't done this before, but I have got this other experience, and is that okay? Yeah. So, I'm also aware there's a part of me which is lacking in confidence in some way about it.
So you're just noticing when you sort of made that proposal that part of you is feeling a little you were lacking confidence in making the proposal, and even though you have this other experience, so you're just sort of sitting with that experience, maybe just seeing what comes up with it.
Yeah, it's like but fortunately, the stronger part of me that has had all this experience of life as an adult, that comes through stronger. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put myself forward for it. But at the same time,
So you feel that anxiety, lack of confidence, but there's another part of you that's kind of strong, assertive, and that just overcomes that feeling of anxiety. You just put yourself forward, and sounds like you probably feel pretty good about that you've got that part of your.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. 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 Because I'm aware the lack of confidence is old stuff, you know, childhood stuff. Which I've done a lot of work on, and it's kind of like, that makes me think of all the conversations that we've been going on about, you know, being with the uncomfortableness, being present to what is, and so it's like I'm just I'm being present to all those parts of me which conflict sometimes.
Yeah. It's like we talked about being open, being vulnerable, being present. And that's what you're actually trying to do in the moment, trying to be present with that anxiety as well as the strength and the groundedness that you have, and just actually embodying what you're talking about, what we're talking about. I'm going to close all the rooms. So we got about 60 seconds.
In those 60 seconds, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you for your openness, your insightfulness, and honesty. They're all key values in the empathic circle, and they're all key values as a facilitator for holding the empathic circle space. If anyone would just like to add a few words.
Thanks
the
for
rest come
facilitating.
Thanks. Good job, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's been great spending an hour and a half with you. So cool to be in a meeting with people from all over the world.
Yeah. And all value empathy. It's like a double treat. Okay. People still popping in. I think everybody should be back. Is that everyone? I guess so. Linda, you were going to do the next part, the debrief.
Yes, thanks, Edwin. So this part of the evening is about everybody sharing how did one of your values relate to empathy and a culture of empathy. So the question that you were talking about in the subject you were talking about in the breakout rooms, and this is just a kind of a bit of a quick round. So if everybody could keep to just a minute's feedback, just about a minute's feedback, then we'll be able to get round everybody before the end of the circle. And because I do not trust myself to kind of make sure everybody's been by naming people, I think what I'd like to do is for somebody to start, and then if they pass on, I will kind of scoop up anybody at the end who's not been passed on to, if that's okay with everybody. So is there anybody who would like to put themselves forward to go first?
Lynn, go ahead.
Michelle's got a finger up.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you. You know, I think for me, what bubbles to the surface is we had a conversation starter around selfishness, and really and truly how the power of taking care of self first empowers us to better facilitate the help to others in many ways, empathy certainly being one of them. So it was kind of a reframing of selfish from the culture we're used to, where it's impregnated in us that it's a bad thing to be selfish. And with everything, there is good and bad, and a certain amount of selfishness goes a long way to healing our family, our friends, our community. So that was my takeaway from today's session. Check. Oh, pass popcorn out to Deborah. Let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, we talked a lot about openness and vulnerability in our group, and yeah, and it was good to spend some time experiencing that and embodying my own anxieties about things as well as my strengths. So, yeah.
Would you like to pass on, Deborah?
Yeah, I'll pass on to Graham.
Thank you, Deborah. Yes, I enjoyed the session. And I think one comment was that we were amongst friends, which was very valuable. And I really enjoyed the idea of us building on each other's contributions. And that was really delightful. And I think there was a lot of connection that came out of that, a lot of mutual understanding. So thank you, everybody. And on to Renata, please.
I talked about one of the values that I put there was honesty, and you know, when I was asked to make the relationship, there are many ways in which we could make the relationships between honesty and empathy, and I thought that the sort of self-honesty, the honesty about knowing how much you already have, that you might have white Western privilege, or that you might just, you know, have more than other people, or, you know, there's this honesty that allows someone to be empathetic with someone else, about, you know, honesty about one's own position, if you like. And I will pass on to Tiago.
Thanks, Renata. The value that I'm exploring and actually struggling with is the honesty or openness, and what the possibilities of how it's safe to share in empathic listening, and needing to get support outside of that. So I think that's enough, and I will pass on to Shai.
Thank you. Yeah, I saw the value of spoke on the value of speaking, freedom of speech, and freedom of speech is something we can have if other people are willing to listen, and there are structures of communication that allow everybody to be heard, and creating more structures like that and more willing of listening is something I see as really important if we want to know what everybody feels and wants, and how our society can function for the benefit of everybody. And I pass it to Larry.
Thank you, Shai. And a beautiful circle. And we started looking at the word mutuality, and then we looked at the word honesty, and then we came up to kindness. The word kindness is so important, and that kindness is needed to create the space for empathy to really be sustainable and to thrive. Really beautiful circle. Thank you all. And I'll pass it on to Michelle. Are you gone?
Michelle has been, I think.
I have.
And
thanks, Larry. Am I muted? No. For me, I think what was quite high up in my mind was about really being present with another person when I'm with someone, to really want to be there. And in fact, I think our conversation in our circle was quite a lot about that, and it was interesting. It was an interesting discussion. And I'm grateful to my group, and I'll pass on to Paul.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, we also had a really great conversation covering a lot of the values that some have mentioned already, particularly openness. A few people talked about. For me, that was really including about safe space. If we're working as a facilitator of a democracy process, then people aren't going to come and share and be open unless you create that safety and that place. And then if you haven't got the openness, then we don't really know what's going on for people. So just really enthusing about the way that we might learn to create safety in different ways, so that trust is there. And then another thing that I found really valuable in our conversation was just this sense of self-compassion. So looking after ourselves, and that gives other people permission to be vulnerable. I thought that was a really, really great inquiry. A lot of value. Thank you. I'll pass on to Monica.
I felt very comfortable in my group. Thank you all.
Mm-hmm.
I take away this kindness that is needed, especially when listening can't happen because there is some so deep hurt maybe, or it's so difficult to identify a shared language when it's docked. Then how to hold the kindness for such a process that listening can continue. So, and I'm left with that it's not a skill, it's not automatically happening, it's an ongoing learning how to enable it and live it. And I pass over to, I don't see all people. Joelle.
The first value I came in with was empathy, and we talked about different ways of connecting with empathy with others, but kind of what happens in our minds when we're not grounded with somebody, and what happens in our minds and our bodies when we are feeling connected and present with someone. And then we also talked about aside from saying the right words when we reflect back to somebody, there's something really important that happens physiologically when we're just present with somebody that's just so powerful and amazing. And let's see, I pass to Marta.
One thing that I came in with is presence, and we spoke of empathy as doing, as an activity, but also being empathy, or trying to embody it, and how in doing that one might be less cognitive and therefore maybe less efficient, but there's a certain resonance that might come with that. I'll pass on to Cecilia.
Thank you, and I'll bring with me a lot of one-liners or rather to the curiosity that can surface with emptying one's agenda, and just to focus and absorb what the other experience, and how enriching it is to both to be present with each other. Thank you. And I'll pass to Mark.
Well, yeah, I thought it's really good group. Good to do a bit of facilitation. One thing that came to my attention at one point is that I was getting very interested in looking at how other people are listening. I just noticed that I started to go, oh, how are they listening? Oh, what's going on there? And just seeing, I don't know, some curiosity in that whole process of listening. Yeah. So yeah, but loads of different things came up. It was great. So I'm going to pass to Ron. Have you spoken yet?
No.
I'll pass to you. Yeah.
Thank you. I came into our session with the value of mutual responsibility, and I left with the value of self-responsibility. So there was learning in that for me. I found connection with all the people in my group around things that they had experienced or things that they talked about. So it was a valuable time for me. Thank you. And I'll pass it on to Dean.
Thank you, Ron. In our group, there was lots of things discussed, all very pertinent, but my takeaway fact was that by creating a safe space, by actually showing your vulnerability to others in a group as a facilitator, you then facilitate other people's ability to open up in the group, and that therefore you develop this empathic listening capacity and self-awareness. I'll pass on to Aaron, who is last again, I believe.
Not quite.
Oh, this Tina.
Thank you, Dean. Yeah, I really enjoyed my work, the group we were in too. Lots of beautiful takes on each other's ideas and taking them further. One of the ones which was really special was I was speaking to the concept of honesty and speaking towards it in a like honest words. Then as a group over the course of maybe another rotation, we ended up arriving at the idea of being honest, embodying honesty, feeling how you feel, speaking from your truth, just being honest. I thought was fantastic, and there's so much learning in that for me, and it's a cool concept. So Tina, have you been yet?
No, I haven't, but I don't think I have much to add. Like all the other folks from my group have already said what we had there. So yeah, that was lovely. And I was just very tickled to hear a different group had pondered the concept of kindness, because that's one of my favorite characteristics a person can have. And I think if we could just instill that in everybody, we'd solve all the world's problems. So yay for kindness is what I want to say. And Linda.
Thanks, Tina. Yeah, so the value that I took into the group was inclusivity, and I definitely felt that the group itself, you know, the circle itself was very inclusive. You know, it was, you could feel it in the air, the inclusivity and the understanding and the empathy within the group. So I think I'm definitely yeah, still very plugged into that concept for empathy circles myself. So I believe that it's just Edwin left to go.
Deborah.
Oh, Deborah, beg your pardon, you haven't been. Go, Deborah.
No, I've been.
Oh, you have been.
I was the second one. Thanks.
Okay, so for me, what came up was sort of the sensitivity to felt experience. I almost feel like if we have the 4 core values, maybe empathy should be the 5th one, not empathy, feeling, sensitivity to felt experience. Because in my group, I shared some tiredness, heaviness, concerns that I had, maybe a bit of anxiety. And I found that by sharing those, my mood kind of became lighter and kind of more energetic. And Deborah actually had shared some anxiety she had felt on a different situation and some strengths she had. So sharing those felt experiences, I think, is something to really bring into the awareness, and how do each of our values relate to a feeling. You know, we hear kindness, there's a felt experience to kindness. We hear compassion, what's the felt experience to compassion? So to have a sensitivity to those ongoing, changing, shifting feelings that we have, and be able to honestly share those. So that's it for me, and I think we're on to Martha. Is that right for our next for the closing section? Yeah.
So first I wanted to check with Dean and Anne, is there anything that you'd need to say before we?
No, I think not. Thank you for me.
Okay, cool. So now is then what's next? And so next week we'll have session 2, and in that we'll get a chance to have a go at facilitating, and then you'll also, for that, it'll be useful that you'll get an email, and in that email there'll be a how-to. So if you have a look at the how-to little cheat sheet as well between now and then in that email there'll be a feedback form. They'll be really grateful if you could just click and fill that in, and then there's going to be also an assignment, and all the information will be on it. One thing will be to arrange a 30-minute buddy call, so it's someone else, because one important part of being a facilitator is to create connections and supporting each other in facilitating, and maybe even figuring out someone else that you can co-facilitate with, all of that. So there'll be instructions there and links on how to go about doing that. And then the other thing, of course, is that we'd encourage you, if you get a chance, to facilitate an empathy circle with some family or friends between sessions. And one last thing, if you want, you can post in the chat one word, one feeling, something that we were left with after today. And so that's us closing. There's nothing else. Anyone else?
Yeah, and just post those values. Can read some of those: happiness, humbleness, warmth, at peace, satisfaction, inspired, grounded, clarity. Great. And so in closing, we'd like to get our jazz hands. So it's a final portrait. We'll post this on the on the website. If you're feeling inspired to give some jazz hands. Shy, come on, we can get the jazz hands. Monica, if you're up to it, we'd love to have some jazz hands. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. So ended about 6 minutes early. So anyway, we'll see you next week, and keep an eye out for the email. Be sure that you allow edwinrutch@gmail.com. It doesn't go into your spam, because we'll be sending out notices, for next steps and the different assignments, and there'll be links and information there. So see you all next week. And if the trainees would stay back for our debrief, appreciate that. So thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,